Welcome everyone. Today is the beginning of the trial for Rasmea Odeh, a Palestinian-American Chicago activist going on trial for an immigration violation charge based on a 20-year-old immigration application. This so-called violation is based on Rasmea's time spent in an Israeli prison 45 years ago, where she was raped and tortured into a confession for a crime that she did not commit. Judge Gershwin Drain agreed that Rasmea's account of her torture was quote-unquote credible, but still ruled the torture and the fact that her confession was coerced were not admissible in court. Larry Jonas, heading the investigation of the Anti-War 23, was also in the courtroom at the time of Rasmea's arrest. This is not a coincidence. The Anti-War 23 are a group of activists subpoenaed by a grand jury in 2010 for their anti-war activism. And this same guy who is leading the investigation against them was also present in the courtroom for Rasmea. The U.S. government has a dark history of witch hunts against those who speak out. Arab, Muslim, and especially Palestinian Americans face direct repression at the hands of the government, including the Holy Land Five and other people who have provided humanitarian aid to the Middle East. Repression of Arabs and Muslims is not an abstract notion. It happens right here in Tampa Bay. Dr. Sami Osmakac faces deportation for the mere crime of speaking out against the brutality against his home of Palestine. Hatem Fariz was put in a communication management unit for donating to Palestinian schools. And Sami Osmakac, a Muslim Albanian with schizoaffective disorder and other mental illnesses that made him vulnerable to manipulation. Sami has been living under solitary confinement and has his sentencing hearing tomorrow, November 5th, at this very courthouse. We're here to demand justice for Rasmea, justice for Sami, and justice to anyone facing repression by the U.S. government.
Students for Democratic Society demands an end to all political repression. Rasmea Odeh is one in a long line of victims of repression by the United States of America. Her case is even directly linked to the Anti-War 23 witch hunt, which used Red Scare-era propaganda and COINTELPRO-style espionage to attempt to bring the protests to an end. Yet here we stand. What the United States government has failed to realize is that as long as they continue to spy on us, as long as they continue to frame us for crimes, as long as they continue to lock us up for speaking out against their crimes, we will only get stronger. Our case against them becomes only more damning. Our resolve to see this through to the end becomes greater, and our understanding that it is a struggle between us and them only becomes clearer. We need to make it clear that we won't stand for the abuse of resistors fighting for peace and justice in the belly of the beast. Students for a Democratic Society demands the United States government take its hands off Rasmea Odeh. We stand in solidarity with all victims of...
As Angela Davis pointed out, targeting Rasmea Odeh 10 years or 20 years after she received citizenship is clear retaliation for the growing success of the solidarity movement for Palestine, including BDS, which has recently gained lightning speed. Palestinian civil society called upon international community for BDS boycotts, divestments, sanctions against Israel until it complies with international law and universal principles of human rights. Today, 66 years into the occupation of Palestinian West Bank, Gaza Strip, and the Golan Heights in Syria, Israel continues to expand its colonies. The state of Israel itself was built upon land that was ethnically cleansed of Palestinian owners, a majority of Palestinians who are refugees now, and many of whom are stateless. Given that all forms of international intervention have until now failed to convince or force Israel to comply with humanitarian law, to respect fundamental human rights, and to end its occupation and oppression of the people of Palestine, and in view of the fact that people of conscience in the international community have historically shouldered the moral responsibility to fight injustice, Students for Justice in Palestine advocates BDS as a strategy that allows people of conscience to play an effective role in the Palestinian struggle for justice and the right of return. We stand for Rasmea as we stand for all political prisoners, and we demand justice for Rasmea as we demand justice for all indigenous Palestinians under occupation. Rebellion under occupation is justified. Rebellion is justified now, and it will remain perpetually justified until every trace of an institutionally oppressive social order is wiped out of existence.
And I'm a rank and file Teamster of Local 79, and I'm here today in solidarity with Rasmea. As a worker, it was very troubling when I heard about the government targeting her. This woman has been a tireless activist in her community, working very closely with union workers as she advocates for women's rights and immigrants' rights as Associate Director of the Arab-American Action Network. Just last year, she was honored with the Outstanding Community Leader Award by the Chicago Cultural Alliance for all the work that she has done. It's ironic that such a strong worker for social justice is on trial on this election day. Apparently, the only leaders this government wants us to have are the ones they decide to put on the ballot. What I also find ironic is that on a day such as this, which is supposedly about making our voice heard, supporters of Rasmea in Detroit are not allowed to protest and use megaphones on the sidewalk in front of the courthouse as we are. The courtroom are also not allowed to wear any attire that would make the jurors think that they support Rasmea. Indeed, Judge Drain has ordered that a partial sequestration for jurors, meaning that instead of arriving at the courthouse individually, they need to meet up at an off-site location determined by U.S. Marshals. These U.S. Marshals would then take them to the courthouse garage so that jurors would, heaven forbid, see Rasmea supporters in front of the courthouse. This case is a blatant example of government repression of free speech. The ridiculous of it goes even further. There was an attempt last month by government prosecutors to claim that call-in days that many people, including myself, organized for Rasmea were jury tampering. Now, more than ever, we need to realize that the two parties that rule this country do not care for the needs of workers. Do not represent me or you or anyone else that isn't a part of the ruling class. Change is not going to come from the ballot box. The government has a vested interest in keeping our voices silent and our needs unmet, and nothing short of revolution is going to change.
Hi, my name is Jared Hamill. I'm a local activist, and I go to many protests, and I've been to this courthouse many, many times. It's a very bad place. But today was the first day of Rasmea Odeh's trial. She's going on trial for being Palestinian in a country that supports and funds the occupation of Palestine. People around the country are protesting. They're going to the courtroom in Detroit and saying, drop the charges against Rasmea Odeh. Tomorrow at this courthouse, Sami Osmakac, bogus charges drummed up by an FBI entrapment case. This is part of an ongoing repression of Arab Americans and Muslims in the United States. Hundreds of cases like Sammy's have happened as a way to fuel the war on terror and a way to silence those from occupied countries. Rasmea's trial will continue, and we will continue too. We stand with Rasmea and all the Palestinian people. And like last Saturday, when activists delayed the Israeli Zim boat at the port of Tampa, we say, from Tampa to Palestine, solidarity is not a crime. Thank you.
My name is Marisol, and I am here on behalf of Raíces in Tampa, like Jessica said. We represent the people who fight back against the attacks on immigrants, and we fully support Rasmea Odeh because she is an immigrant from Palestine. Like many immigrants who come to the U.S., she was forced to come here as a result of the actions by the U.S. A fighter for her people for many decades, Rasmea organized in Palestine to defend the overtake of her land. She was captured and tortured brutally for 10 years. Let me re-emphasize, for 10 long years and traumatizing years, Rasmea was abused and held captive by Israel. She was then released and was able to set up a new life in Chicago, leading her community there to build support for her native Palestine. But as if the U.S. and Israel hadn't tortured Rasmea enough, now they want to charge her. They want to charge her supposedly for something that she did on her application. Like many of us in Raíces know, the errors on immigration papers are expensive and heavily felt in the homes of immigrants. We support Rasmea. We support her fight for her native Palestine. And most of all, we are completely against the potential deportation that she may face. If she is deported, she will again be at the hands of the same people who abused her for 10 long years. Justice for Rasmea. Drop the charges now.
Rasmea!
Drop the charges now!
Justice for Rasmea!
Drop the charges now!
Justice for
starts now.